On my first day as a literature student many moons ago, my English 101 professor asked the class, "What is literature?" And of course, we all said, "Books." And she said, "No, all language is literature. Books, film, music, journalism, social media, video games, recipes, tourism pamphlets, junk mail. All of it is literature. And we, as writers, are in conversation with all literature all the time." For a while now, I've been toying with the idea of starting a series where we look at pop culture artifacts as if we're in a creative writing workshop and seeing what writing lessons we can distill from them, good, good, bad, and otherwise. However, I didn't know where to start until Katy Perry's new album, 143, happened. Now, I'm not much of a pop music listener, other than Chappell Roan, of course. So if a new album release is so bad that even I hear about it, it must be pretty bad. So today I thought we would look at a few, shall I say, exemplary tracks from the album, workshop them a bit to see what went wrong, and look at how we as writers can avoid making the same mistakes. Of course, for copyright purposes, I can only play very short clips of the songs themselves, but we're really more interested in the lyrics anyway, so I will put those on the screen and then read them aloud. Starting at the top with the lead single, if you can call it that, Woman's World. Lesson number one, read the room. I don't think it's controversial to say Woman's World is the most heinous track on this album because it's just offensively tone deaf. I mean, the first lyric alone, it's a woman's world and you're lucky to be living in it, it's just wildly out of touch with the reality. Now, I don't mean to start off like politically. That's not my favorite or preferred way of analyzing literature of any kind, but the song kind of forces us to. You know, listening to the song, I just can't not think of the general state of the world. First thing that comes to mind for me is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Of course, obviously, we're a month out from the election, and you're aware of the individuals who could potentially become the most powerful people in the world again. And just all the innumerable atrocities women around the globe face daily. This is very clearly not a woman's world, and that's something that listeners are aware of and are thinking about. And of course, not to mention Perry's highly distasteful, to put it nicely, collaboration with Kesha's alleged abuser, Dr. Luke, for a women's empowerment anthem. Moving on to the verses and pre-chorus. Sexy, confident, so intelligent. She is heaven sent, so soft, so strong. She's a winner, champion, superhuman, number one. She's a sister, she's a mother. Open your eyes, just look around, and you'll discover. How so? In what ways is this general, she, a winner and a champion? You know, 12 to 15-ish years ago, when Perry was at her height with empowerment songs, the cultural mood, the zeitgeist, if you will, was very different than it is right now. Namely, Obama was in office and MAGA didn't exist, or at least not in the same form that it does right now. So today, this attempt at like super fluffy, feel-good pop, it just rings false. You know, like right now, today, actually, I think at the time that I'm uploading this, we're a month out from what is very likely the most critical election in most of our lifetimes. And we're just not in a silly party, fun time mood right now. And now this premise could work if it was set up to subvert and satirize itself, which is what I kept expecting. Like, if the song became self-aware of how overblown and incorrect it is, I would have way less of a problem with it. You know, this actually reminded me of a musical SNL skit from a few years ago. I think it was like 2018, maybe 17, right after like the Me Too movement really started. I forget what it's called, but I'll put it here, where they use like the image of actually pretty much like a Katy Perry song that's really super male gazy, bright colors, very sexualized, but the lyrics are talking about how women are terrified. I almost thought that this was going to go in that direction, and I was sorely disappointed. No literature exists in a vacuum, and as writers, we do need to be aware of the context in which we're writing. Now, this is not to say that you need to be addressing every social, cultural, and political issue of the day. Not at all. None of us have time for all of that. But you do need to be aware of your audience, their struggles, their preoccupations, who they are, and what they care about. In Perry's case, writing a women's empowerment anthem about a world in which women reign supreme and don't seem to have any struggles to an audience of women who do not reign supreme and are keenly aware of their struggles is just not going to blow over well. Compare Woman's World to Chappell Roan's Femininomenon. I never said that out loud before, but I think I got it right. Roan champions women and women supporting women, but also acknowledges the frustrations and disappointments of things like online dating and mediocre men. Like, these are things that are probably on her audience's minds. So I was reading the Woman's World lyrics on Genius, and there's a Genius annotation that reads, Katy's latest single, Woman's World, may be her most direct and impactful statement yet. Through this track, Katy wants the world to know that women are increasingly dominating various areas, particularly within the music industry. The data from 2023 and 2024 shows the remarkable rise of female artists in the industry. 8 out of the top 10 songs of 2023 were performed by female acts. And okay, that's cool and fine if she wants to highlight women's achievements in the music industry, in which case the celebratory tone would fit. But the lyrics are just so amazingly general that listeners can't tell that that's the intent, and so it reads as tone deaf. This leads us to lesson number 2, specificity is your friend. When reading that Woman's World is supposed to highlight women in the music industry, at least in part, this brought to mind the Hozier song, Nina Cried Power. The song is a tribute to Nina Simone and many other writers of protest music, and Hozier names them, people like James Brown, Joni Mitchell, Patti Smith, John Lennon, etc. And it's that specificity that populates the world of the song, and it makes it powerful and memorable. If the lyric was just, people cried power, it would fall flat, like you're missing something. Because the Woman's World lyrics are all so non-specific, they carry no weight and meaning. This she is everyone and no one. Generality is a problem in the 5th track as well, called Crush. It's a problem in every track, but I think these are the most notable. Let's look at the first verse. Feelin' all the butterflies, livin' in a candy daydream, emotions that I can't describe, even all the birds are singing. This combination of cliche language and generic language, it just makes the verse so boring, completely unaffecting. Now, cliches do have their place, and in fact, I think they are kind of part of Katy Perry's branding. Baby, you're a firework, or California girls, bikinis, and Daisy Dukes. These are not particularly original or unique images, but in her height, they were raised to this level of cheeky and over the top, larger than life when it worked. I would ask the songwriters in question, because there are 10 of them to write that. Where do you feel the butterflies? How exactly do they feel? Which exact bird species is singing? Let's edit that lyric slightly. Even the sparrows are singing. Huge difference, right? Or even the songbirds are singing. That single degree of specificity adds interest. That's why the best line of this verse, in my opinion, is living in a candy daydream. It's still not great, but first it calls to mind teenage dream, which adds a layer of interest, and then candy, it brings to mind some sort of image. It modifies daydream into something more concrete. My stupid scarf keeps trying to choke me, but it matched my earrings, and I was feeling very Miss Frizzle today. There's a reason that Firework is one of Katy Perry's most popular and beloved songs. That opening line of, do you ever feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind, is so specific, brings to mind an image immediately, and it's unexpectedly relatable. A listener is probably thinking, yeah, I actually do kind of feel like that. As mentioned, cliches are not the worst thing ever if used sparingly, and generic language can be a perfectly fine place to build off of, but neither of those things are going to stand on their own and create a strong, memorable piece of writing. Imagine reading a story that opened with, "It was a dark and stormy night," and then it never elaborated, never expanded on that, you'd probably be a little confused, very bored, and let down immediately. If you're going to start writing that way, you have to transform the cliche. Bring it somewhere new, or at least somewhere else. You have to get specific to set the scene. In other words, you need forward motion and progression. Looking at the structure of another one of the more popular tracks, Lifetimes, I noticed so much repetition. The opening lyrics, I'll love you for lifetimes, repeats 6 times for a total of 12 lines. And then the chorus, refrain, and post-chorus each appear identically 3 times. There is only one verse that differs. Now, of course, I'm aware that song lyrics in a verse-chorus structure are going to repeat, particularly in pop music, but here it just feels like copy and paste. There's just no development, no variation, no story arc, no climax or conclusion. There's just none of that, and that's the case with just about every song on this album. Now, I do think the song Artificial is the one exception, but we'll get there in a second. There's a reason that one of the most common pieces of writing advice, especially for beginners, is to write with the end in mind, or even to write the ending first. It gives you a landmark to work towards, and it prevents your writing from either wandering aimlessly or staying stagnant. Every good story has some sort of movement and progress, even the ones with like the quietest plots or the most experimental writing. Without change, there can't be a story. Now, I have read that Katy and her team were going for a more house music, dance track kind of feel with this album. I'm not very familiar with that genre, so maybe a story arc is not as important here, but I kind of don't think it really matters. These songs are just shallow and stagnant, and even if they're danceable, that's just not what the general music listening population wants right now. I think it's pretty clear that what Perry really wanted with 143 was a big comeback, a big revival, but you just can't have that if the music doesn't align with the current taste. In music, in literature, on social media, I think in many areas of our lives right now, people are craving authenticity. They want to listen to an individual voice who has something to say. But real quick, if you're enjoying this video so far, do consider hitting that subscribe button. This is Thought Couture. I'm Kelsey Jo, and I publish new videos almost every week on book recommendations, literary commentary, and creative writing advice like this. So I'm going to bring up Chappell Roan again for the last time, but I do think she's the best example we have right now. Compare Lifetimes to Good Luck Babe. While of course Good Luck Babe has repeated lyrics, the song as a whole tells a story, and each verse moves it along. It builds to that bridge which lands with such force and power, like you almost can't believe she went there. And that's at least in part why the song has become such a hit. It takes us on a ride to this climax that's quite unlike anything we've heard in recent years. I mentioned a moment ago that the best song on 143, in my opinion, is Artificial, and that's because it's the song that comes closest to having a storyline and saying something specific that would resonate with the audience. The song is about the rise of AI and how it disconnects people from reality and from each other. While the chorus, who's gonna save us from losing our minds, why you so artificial, repeats like choruses do, each of the verses has just so much more variety from pretty much anything else we've seen on the album. You can just tell by looking at it how much longer it is and how each line is unique. There are even some lines like, you got me hooked on your algorithm, and artificial intelligent information, I've been developing truth, I took a bite into the bitterest forbidden fruit. Finally have at least some substance. This brings us to our final lesson: write what you love and the rest will follow. This probably sounds corny and stupidly obvious, but everything about the album tells me that it bears repeating. So I know we've only looked at a few tracks, but just believe me when I say that listening through the whole album, you really never get a sense that Katy is invested in the song she's singing, or even enjoys it like at all. There is an AP News review I want to quote that describes the feel of 143 perfectly. An 11-track blur of thick electronic programming and simplistic lyrics. There's none of her past cheeky humor, virtually no personality. Even the title is filler. filler is exactly how this album feels. All of the songs just exist with no heart behind them. None stand out as a well-crafted, engaging banger that you want to play over and over. Perry has said in interviews that 143 is for and about her daughter and the experience of motherhood. And that's nice and that's cute, but my lukewarm take in this is that the real motivation behind this album was proving her relevance and reminding everyone that she's a superstar. This hasn't come up yet, but in fairness, I can understand how Perry might feel insecure as an aging star in youth-obsessed Hollywood and watching the new crew of 20-somethings occupy the place that used to be hers. Now, it is a damn shame that the music industry and Hollywood in general just tosses women away once they hit 35. That absolutely has to change. Absolutely. But prioritizing competition with younger artists over crafting great music is how you end up with this. This reminds me of how in every single creative writing class I've ever taken, there's always that one guy. In my experience, it's always been a guy, but not necessarily, who wants to be a writer so bad that he spends all of his energy on proving his writerliness to the rest of the writers rather than improving his craft. I'm talking, the tweed jackets with the elbow patches, collecting typewriters, not accepting criticism. And the irony is, had this person set aside how he appeared to his peers and focused on actually writing, he would have become the writer that he wanted to be. In an interview on the podcast Call Her Daddy, Perry was given the opportunity to address and defend her decision to work with Dr. Luke, but she sidesteps that entirely and says, "I don't think I've went for a trend or anything. I just do what makes me happy and that I resonate with, and that gives me those chill bumps, and even more so now, I don't feel like I have to make music. I don't feel like I have to prove anything. I'm doing it now from a place of celebration and love." But according to Rolling Stone, a source from her record label says, "Katy knew exactly the album she wanted to make and put together the team to make it happen," a Capitol Records source confirms to Rolling Stone. And that includes previous collaborators, including Luke, etc. And those statements are a bit contradictory, in my opinion. It's hard to believe she truly doesn't feel the need to prove anything when she puts together a team of the producers and the writers who were responsible for her previous hits and paid no regard to the immense controversy and the abhorrent alleged actions of one of them. I recently took an online short story writing workshop, and the instructor told us that the best way to get our stories published was to write without publication in mind. In other words, by channeling your energy to the love of the craft and the art form of writing, of course your writing is going to improve, and you'll end up writing stories so strong and compelling that they get published. I am willing to bet that had Katy truly leaned into this place of love and celebration that she claims to be in, this album would have been infinitely better. It might not have been that big comeback, that big revival that she wanted, but I can pretty much guarantee that it wouldn't have become the laughingstock of pop.
So I forgot to mention that I've seen a few reviews speculating that Perry and her team wanted to craft an album where the songs could become viral trending audio clips on TikTok. And that makes sense to me, and I think it does explain quite a bit of what we're seeing here. If you're writing a song or anything with the express purpose of becoming a viral trend, of course it's going to be generic and shallow and soulless because you want that thing to be as applicable to as many people and situations as possible. I've used the word ironic a lot in this video, but the irony is that you can't try to go viral. Typically, the best trends are more like happy accidents rather than intentions.
And to put this lesson into more actionable terms, think about that thing that you love so much, that you want to write so bad, that it doesn't matter whether it gets published, whether it wins awards. You just want this thing to exist on paper in the world and follow that. Help that thing grow to become the best piece of writing that it can be. And although I can't make guarantees, in my experience, it is that thing that does end up getting you to the place that you want to be. Well, that is it for me today. I hope you found this light roasting of Katy Perry and 143 somewhat entertaining and at least a little bit educational. In retrospect, I feel like this was a difficult place to start off the series because 143 is more of a cautionary tale than a model of creative brilliance. So here's hoping that something more aspirational will come along in the near future. So I would love to know, have you listened to this album? Have you heard the reviews and criticisms? What were your thoughts? What do you think Perry could have done differently? Reminder, you can also follow me on Instagram, Threads, and Goodreads for fun bookish extras and more full-length reviews. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll also enjoy this one that YouTube chose specifically for you. And as always, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.